Good afternoon. It's day 3 of the Special Libraries Conference here in Cleveland, Ohio. Sitting next to me is Steve Abram. Steve is a consultant with Lucidia. Lucidia is the diamond sponsor of this year's conference. We want to thank them and all our sponsors for the support they give to the Society. Steve, one of the things I'd like to talk a little bit about is your experience, your long experience in information as an information professional, as an author, and the changes that you're seeing in the business. A lot of people will say this is the time of the death knell for information professionals and librarians, etc. And as I've said in previous recordings, I do not listen to these prophets of doom. I'd like to hear your perspective. You see a lot more clients, you see a lot more individuals in different situations. How do you see the robustness of our profession going forward, and some of the cautions that we should be taking as we move forward?
So I get that question all the time from mayors, premiers, governors, talking about, well, our libraries doing this. Well, I'm working with libraries that have grown 83% in the last 10 years. My usual line is, you will agree, we're in an information and knowledge-based economy. What would be the most important person in that economy? Like when we were in a financially driven economy, it was CPAs and MBAs. Now that we're in an information-based economy, it's MLSs, people who are know what the content is in the pipes, not just the pipes and how they're plugged together.
Okay.
And then we go into the fact that anyone in our profession who has ever made an OCLC record has participated in the creation of Amazon, Google Books, all the big things, because Amazon wouldn't work without the OCLC WorldCat database. It's the backbone. I was talking to one of the executives at Amazon yesterday. They know it's the backbone of their service for the book side of it. When we look at the human-computer interface, who knows how information becomes knowledge? So in the KM practice, that's learning. There's 7 styles of learning. It's a human-based condition, and humans are complex, complicated, messy, and technology tries to pretend that doesn't exist. So someone in our profession who actually understands that the nature of information transfer is the uniqueness of a human brain processing it, not delivering it to a desktop.
You make an interesting point about the KM world, and I've always talked about with my colleagues about the individual is so important in the process, because it takes the information asset and through transformation by a human being with their institutional knowledge, with their experience just as a human being living, takes that piece of data and really turns it into an organizational asset. And by building and efficiently organizing these organizational assets, we then can create, as Michael Porter speaks about, degrees of competitive advantage in the marketplace.
Exactly.
And so that really leads to longevity for us. And I tell my colleagues this, constantly, that gone are the days of the librarian sitting waiting for the reference, if ever that ever existed.
Yeah, not in special libraries.
Not in special libraries. That we really need to be thinking forwardly and being outside of the physical space, that however we might occupy it, and always be asking the question, what to our constituents, what are you doing, and how can I help you drive value for your client? You, as the professional in the organization, you're my client, but I know you have clients outside. Like I work in a law firm. The attorneys that I work with, they have clients they have to deliver value to. Every interaction that we should be having should be always around what value can we drive for our ultimate client.
So when we rightfully, and sometimes this gets weird, we rightfully participate in how to improve the quality of decisions. Librarians' core skill is improving the quality of a question, not delivering information. You improve the quality of the question from how people ask it, and you improve the quality of the question, like in the KM space, it's communities of practice. Can you bring the right people into the community? So it's valid for SLA to have an inclusion caucus.
Right.
Diversity is just a census. Inclusion is the strategy. When we have different thinking styles, different cultures, different nationalities in the making of a decision, we improve the end product. So we become data professionals, and there's a core group in our world of taxonomists and people who do that. Then we work with the information professionals, the people who write the content, because it's mostly not us. Then we get into knowledge and the space between information and knowledge. But knowledge has to tie to behavior. So when we're looking at how do we create great behaviors in an organization, when we're in a specialized library role there, then we look at things like inclusion and our networks and connecting people with people as much as connecting them with information. And so we look at the big societal issues around social cohesion. Well, social cohesion is how do we make good decisions? So things like fake news or deep fake videos and stuff are valid for us to look at, not because that's the low-hanging fruit to fix. Our issue is judging the depth of quality. Like, is this a research study that was done on 6 people and it showed this trend? Or is it a blanket study that looked at all the studies on the behavioral genome? And how is that, how do we create really good teams? And then what's our role on those teams to just do the little interventions that drive better behaviors around the decisions that are made and the behaviors that are enacted?
You know, you bring up the issue of inclusion, and it's so important because you're absolutely right. When we have true inclusion, and I don't mean just as a numbers counting thing, like how many of X type of person we have in the organization.
Yeah.
I get sort of frustrated with sometimes when
Tokenism.
Well, not even tokenism, but questions are asked. How, like, in the law firm context, how many African American partners do we have at X firm? Okay, fine. There might be 6, 8, 1,000. Who knows? And the number is important, but the number is not it's a means to an end. It's not the ends in itself.
It's also when you, like, one of the most important knowledge management reports that was ever done was the study of why the Space Shuttle Challenger fell out of the air. Mm-hmm. And it came down to 2 things. An overuse of PowerPoint, like it came down to the O-ring, but it was the overuse of PowerPoint that they degraded the transfer of information down to 3 bullet slides. And that was their major conclusion. The second conclusion was that NASA had an engineering dominant culture where cause and effect is one of their great skills. But now, as a result of that study, NASA is engaging in hiring more humanities professionals, because humanities professionals and our training in history and English and storytelling tells us that there are 5 scenarios launched from a certain point, not the retroactive coherence that the scientific method does. Scientific method is one thing, but when you're looking at what are the potential causes of failure and failure analysis, there's a number of librarians here who only practice failure and forensic librarianship. Because then we learn things like, if we have humanities professionals on the team, their cautions come from a different place. They see patterns. And when you put them together with the engineering culture, you create a stronger decision-making process when the culture listens to the different value systems of how scenarios and things are launched. So librarians, which tend not to come largely from a science background, bring that pattern matching ability to improving the quality of the information and the patterns that need to be there.
And you again hit on another point. It's inclusion is good, but it has to be meaningful. People have to have a seat at the table. I had a chat with the head of D&I, diversity and inclusion at my firm, and that's one of the things that she's always talking about. Diversity is being asked to attend the dance. Inclusion is being asked to actually get up and dance.
Yeah.
And with that,
that's a good metaphor.
I want to thank you for taking the time and helping me dance as a better information professional.
Thank you, Eugene.
Steve,
It's a
thank
pleasure.
you much. Take care.